Hi class, today we are going to be reading an overview of Chapter 2, our newest chapter. Now there's going to be 3 sections in this chapter. Lesson 1 is going to be the dawn of the age of exploration. Lesson 2, Spanish exploration and conquest. And Lesson 3, European powers in the Americas. Today we're just looking at the chapter as a whole. Now the essential question for this is going to be, what happened when diverse cultures crossed paths? Let's zoom in here and take a look. So it says, in this chapter, you'll read about how European exploration of the New World changed the Americas forever. You'll consider what the Europeans had to gain, as well as exploration affected the lives and cultures of native peoples. Let's take a look at the map over here. So this map says routes of European explorers. It says step into the place. In which regions were the Spanish explorers mainly interested? And number 2, it says, where else in the world were the European powers exploring? Okay, here's what we got going. Here's a map of the world, and these are the countries: Portugal, Spain, France, England. Portugal is going to be in green, and then these are the different explorers and the times that they went. So green would be solid for Diaz de Gama, is going to be the dashed, and then the dotted would be Cabral. Spain, same thing. We have the 2 different explorers here, Columbus and Magellan, yellow. France will be purple, and England would be red. So to answer the question, where did Spanish explorers mainly go, or where were they mainly interested? We're going to need to look at the yellow right here. So if we look at the yellow, we can see that the Spanish were here in the Caribbean, and we can trace this around, and they went around over here to Africa and then back around to Spain. So it looks like, according to this map, that they were really interested in finding a route around to Spain or around the world. And where were other European powers exploring? Well, if we look here at France, France was coming over here and they were exploring North America, particularly the northern part of North America, Canada, though they did go down in here into the south and the Louisiana, but they first came in through the Maine and New Brunswick area of Canada. And then we have England, who they were over here on the east coast as well. But they also, like Spain, were looking for ways around the world, and they were exploring this coast here of South America and this area of North America. And of course, the Spanish, they did a lot in South America, which is why there's a lot of countries that speak Spanish there. And Portugal, they were this area here, South America, Brazil. That's why they speak Portuguese here, and then around Africa and over into India. Okay, let's take a look at other parts of this page. Over the course of about 100 years, the major European powers of Spain, Portugal, France, and England, and the Netherlands participated in a mad dash to explore and claim land in the New World. Reports of gold and other resources that could enrich their nations tempted these Europeans to spend money and take risk to sponsor several voyages. Some were successful and others were not. While the voyages led to different places in the Americas, they all led to a similar result for the people who already lived there: sweeping change. Now, at the bottom here, you can see we do have a timeline covering significant explorers and when they were there. And it says, look at the timeline. What was happening in other parts of the world while Europeans were exploring the Americas? And here we go back into the 1300s. We have Marco Polo. He returns from China. And the plague called the Black Death begins, eventually killing approximately 1/3 of the European population. That's in 1350. While that's going on in the late 1300s, the Navajo arrive in what is now southwestern United States. Interesting. So at that same time frame as the plague is going on, the Navajos were settling in the southwestern U.S. Okay, 1425, Prince Henry of Portugal begins sponsoring explorations of the west coast of Africa. And here we have the Ottoman Turks capture Constantinople. And then we have the Spanish Inquisition begins in 1847. And shortly thereafter, we have Christopher Columbus reaching the New World in 1492. And that sets off a whole new group of explorers going over to the New World, which would be North America and South America. It wasn't really new, was it? We already learned about all those native people who were already here in the Americas, but it was new to the Europeans. John Cabot explores the eastern coast of Canada in 1497, and in 1488, Portugal's Bartolomeu Diaz sails around Africa to the Indian Ocean. All right, let's take a look at the next group of things on our timeline here. So remember, timelines happen sequentially. So it goes from oldest to youngest. So this happened a long time ago. This happened more recently. In 1498, Portugal's Vasco da Gama reaches India by sea. In 1513, Juan Ponce de Leon claims Florida for Spain. Hernandez Cortez invades the Aztec Empire. Remember, we read about the Aztecs, so Cortez would be a Spanish explorer. In 1522, Spanish Magellan Elcano expedition completes voyage around the world. So he went all the way around the world, which back then was pretty cool. I mean, think about it. 1522, there were no satellites to help them navigate. There were no cell phones, nothing. So they were on their own for quite a while to do it. Impressive. 1532, Francisco Pizarro invades the Inca Empire. And we had read about the Incas. So now we have the Europeans starting to invade the native groups in those lands. Jacques Cartier claims a land along the St. Lawrence River for France. In 1543, Nicholas Copernicus argues that the Earth revolves around the sun, challenging most people's beliefs. Believe it or not, people used to think that the Earth was the middle of the universe and everything rotated around the Earth. Well, Copernicus said, yeah, no, actually the sun is the middle of the solar system and everything goes around the sun. And in fact, we're not even the middle of the universe. We're kind of off to the edge. So that was pretty revolutionary for the time. And here we have in 1609, Henry Hudson sets sail from the Netherlands to explore North America. Let's take a look at the next page. This is titled Connect Through Literature. And it says, Cabin Boy Aboard the Buena Estrella. From the Journal of Dominic Raimundo, age 10, by Jennifer Bouchette, illustrated by Shelley Jackson. So what we have here is a journal from a cabin boy. And these cabin boys weren't sailors per se. They were training to be sailors often, and they were just like the servants of the sailors on the ship. Usually it'd be for the captain and the officers, and they would help them out. Okay, so let's take a look at this. First it says, what if you could have sailed with an explorer 400 years ago? This is what your days might have been like. August 5th, 1524. At last the winds are with us. I'm anxious to reach New Spain and discover my fortune. I want to stop right there. After New Spain, there's this one right here. And here's what that means. That one right there correlates to this one right here at the bottom. And it says, in the 1500s, Spain had claimed a huge area of land in North America. The land was called New Spain. Okay, let's get back to this. I'm anxious to reach New Spain and discover my fortune. Every day, I rise at 3 a.m. to wake the crew. I sing morning hymns, cook, and then lay out salted pork and ale for everyone. Afterward, I help the captain with the logbooks that record everything that is happening. And then I walk the ship, working wherever I'm needed. Yesterday, I helped stop up a small leak. I still smell the awful odor of tar on me. Perhaps tomorrow I can bathe with a bucket of seawater. August 15th. I miss my bed at home. I didn't have enough money to buy a hammock before we left Spain, so I sleep against sacks of grain or with the horses. But it really smells down below, and the rats bite. When the nights are clear, I sleep topside and stargaze. The clanging of the ringing, the ropes and metal fixtures, and the whoosh of the waves are my lullaby. August 22nd. The sky has been darkening all day. The air is heavy. Captain Padilla ordered us to batten down the hatches, that is to cover up the entrances to go below deck, and secure all the lines. Even the dolphins have gone. I'm afraid. Let's take a look at the next page. August 26. Dios mío, I'm alive. These last few days have been the worst of my life. I feared a giant sea monster was trying to devour us all. I couldn't tell if it was day or night, so dark was the sky. The ship bucked and pitched in the merciless waves. Twice we nearly capsized. Sadly, 3 sailors fell into the churning seas. Water was everywhere, including below deck. I helped pump the bilge, trying to ignore the horses' terrified cries. My arms still ache, but at least I'm alive. So a bilge or a bilge pump would be a pump that the ships have below deck, and it would pump out the water. So any water that was getting into the ship that could potentially sink it, these men would pump it up and down with their arms, and it would suck in the water that's in the ship and push it out over the deck back into the ocean. All right, let's take a look at August 28th. We limp toward Havana for repairs. Captain Padilla says our expedition is delayed by at least 3 weeks. Food supplies are low and tempers are high. We couldn't collect rainwater during the storm, and now our barrels are filled with algae scum. The remaining cheese is moldy, and sometimes it hurts to bite into what's left of the hardtack. Hard is the right word for those biscuits. I remind myself that gold and glory await me. September 8th. At last, dry land. Some sailors talk of staying in Cuba, finding work in the gold mines or on the sugarcane farms. But I'll continue. After that hurricane, I don't even fear the Indians. And then there's a 2 right there, and that corresponds to this 2. It says, because Columbus thought he had reached the Indies in Asia, he called the people of the Caribbean Indians. Later explorers used the same name. All right, we're going to stop on this page right there. That's pretty crazy to think that they would go into a hurricane, but again, back then, they didn't have weather forecasting satellites like we have now, so they couldn't see a storm that was coming, and sometimes things like hurricanes just hit them. All right, let's take a look at the next page. Okay, this page says, people you should know. Let's take a look at our first one. Moctezuma II. At the time of the arrival of Spanish conquistador Herman Cortez, Moctezuma II controlled the Aztec Empire. Moctezuma, however, often demanded sacrifices from tribes that were his subjects. Years of these demands had led many people to dislike him. When Cortez kidnapped Moctezuma, Cortez assumed the Aztecs would not fight for fear of endangering their ruler. The people were only too glad to be rid of Moctezuma, however, and the fight that followed resulted in Moctezuma's death. Next, we have Marco Polo. The Italian merchant Marco Polo was one of the world's first travel writers. He, his father, and his uncle traveled from Europe across the Middle East, India, China, Vietnam, and back again. Polo told of his 24 years of adventures in a classic piece of literature called Il Million, or The Million. This title probably comes from Polo's nickname, which referred to his tendency to talk about the millions of things he had seen. All right, next we've got Queen Elizabeth I of Spain. It says, born a princess of Castile, Isabella united all of Spain when she married Ferdinand I of Aragon. Together they conquered Granada and increased the size of their empire. It was as she was encamped with her army at Granada that an Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus approached her. He asked for her support for an expedition to find a western route to Asia. She agreed to give him some money, seeing an opportunity to enrich her country. And as we know, that explorer was Christopher Columbus. All right, last, we have Atahualpa. Let's take a look at him. So it says, After the death of his father, Inca Emperor Huaycan Capac Atahualpa waged war with his half-brother for the Inca throne. Only a few months after his victory, however, Atahualpa's reign was cut short. Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro entered the Inca city of Cusco in November of 1532. Pizarro invited Atahualpa to a feast. Using the example set by Hernan Cortés, Pizarro captured Atahualpa and killed his soldiers. The Inca emperor promised the Spaniard mountains of gold and silver in return for his release. Once the riches had been delivered, however, Pizarro killed Atahualpa anyway and ended the Inca Empire. All right, boys and girls, go back and rewatch this video if you need to, or reread any sections that you're not sure about. And as always, we'll see you soon.